Mayor Walt Maddox, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
You're welcome.
So the first questions that I will ask you will be asked to all of the governor candidates that will have the honor of interviewing. After those questions, I will ask you more about your campaign specifically. Our first question for today is, why do you believe you are the best candidate for governor of Alabama?
Well, I believe I first have the executive experience that's necessary, being the chief executive officer of the city of Tuscaloosa. And the second thing is the ability to forge common ground to create solutions. We're a purple city, and we certainly have had our share of crises between the Great Recession and the April 27, 2011 tornado. And through it all, we continue to be one of Alabama's fastest growing cities. We rank 9th in the nation in reducing poverty. And we've done it for 12 and a half years without one ethical complaint or hint of corruption. We've demonstrated that we can make it work and make it work for everyone.
Okay. What are the most important differences you believe you have from the other candidates for governor of Alabama?
Well, number one is the executive experience, but number two is the ability to put policies over people. Put policies over politics, because if you look at our website, we're one of the rare candidates, the only candidate to my knowledge, that has been putting detailed policies about the issues facing Alabama, whether it's opioids or mental health or infrastructure or education or healthcare. The mayor in me tells me that you have to have, real solutions to real problems, and it has to be more than just, I'm for education against crime. Anyone can say that. How are you going to achieve the result? And that, to me, is the most important. I don't care about rhetoric, I care about results.
Okay. According to the Alabama Department of Labor, 104,027 Alabama citizens were unemployed as of April 2017. As of March 2018, 81,229 Alabamians were unemployed. How do you plan to continue to lower the number of unemployed citizens if you become governor?
Well, and I think something, too, that doesn't get mentioned in those stats that's very concerning to me is that we have 60,000 less jobs today than we did 10 years ago. And we also rank second in the nation in the number of people who've dropped out of the workforce, have given up and trying to find a job. As Alabamians, we need to do better. The first thing that I'd like to do is consolidate the 4 different functions of government that handle workforce development. That needs to be streamlined, and it needs to be a cohesive effort between K-12, post-secondary, AIDT, and the workforce development councils. The second thing is part of our lottery proposal. We expand apprenticeship programs and academy trainings across Alabama to develop the type of workforce we need. There is some data showing that we bring in tens of thousands, maybe even upwards of over 100,000 people a day into our state to work jobs. That means we have a workforce that's not ready. If we want to lower employment, let's have a workforce that's ready to meet the skills, especially in a highly technical 21st century economy.
Okay. Alabama has nearly 102,000 miles of roads. 50% of our roads are rated poor. What ideas do you have to improve Alabama's infrastructure?
Well, this week we released our infrastructure plan, which really mirrors a lot of what you see in the Alabama Alliance for Infrastructures, which is part of the Business Council of Alabama's plan. What we'd like to see is a fuel charge of 12 cents be added to Alabama's fuel. It hasn't been increased since 1992. And certainly this 12 cents would go a long way in repairing Alabama's roads and bridges. 20% of our bridges today are functionally obsolete, which means that you shouldn't drive over them. But today 1 million Alabamians drove over those bridges. 9 cents would go to state highways, and 3 cents then would be bifurcated out between counties and cities for a lot of just your maintenance and repair needs, paving in particular for our county and city governments. Our roads are in such a poor condition, it's beyond just even a public safety issue. It is also an economic development issue, because transporting your goods to and from market is hugely important. And if our roads and bridges are not adequate, we will not continue to grow our economy.
Okay. I understand the importance of education for K through 12 Alabama students. How will you improve Alabama's educational system if you become governor?
Well, the first thing we're going to do is pass the Alabama Education Lottery, which is going to generate $300 million a year, and it's going to go to 4 places in particular. Number one is universal pre-K. I think that is absolutely important now in this technology-driven 21st century environment. We've got to begin earlier. The second thing we want to do is a college scholarship program, very similar to what you see in Tennessee, but it's going to be more driven by workforce development, 2-year and apprenticeship, but also 4-year. And for tens of thousands of Alabamians, that's going to be a pretty significant tax break, which could be in the thousands of dollars a year. which will help make college more affordable for so many Alabamians. The third thing that we want to do is there's about 100 schools each year that have not been sustaining any sort of excellence. We have got to figure out different approaches, and one of the things we want to do is through our community innovation grants is provide wraparound services at those school sites. And the last thing that we want to do is make up the divides in urban and rural funding. Alabama is constitutionally required to provide public education, but the type of education you get in Marengo County is vastly different than the education you get in Mountain Brook. We have got to equal that playing field, so we take $60 million of those proceeds, divide it out among the most impoverished areas of our state, and allocate those resources directly into the classroom so that we can improve instruction. And with that, we want to improve flexibility. We have a lot of bureaucracy that holds back education in many of our struggling schools. We need to free it up, give teachers the ability to innovate and to explore different ways of learning for children who come from different backgrounds and experiences.
Okay. I'm now going to change gears and talk to you about some campaign questions specifically. Okay. You have said efficiency is the key to improving education. What are some specific areas that you would want to focus on improving?
Well, the first thing, getting back to the lottery plan, is looking at those 100 schools or so that are struggling. One of the things that we need to do is provide wraparound mental health and public health services at those schools. One of the reasons why young people, especially in impoverished areas, miss those appointments that they have is because they don't have transportation. But in Alabama today, we know that a school bus is going to go by someone's home 180 times a year. Why not deliver those services on site and let the bus transportation be the nexus to make certain that we get those wraparound services at those schools? The second thing that I would like to do, especially in our struggling schools, is figure out how we can streamline and cut the bureaucracy there to give teachers the ability to dictate better outcomes. I've often found in my career it's where the rubber meets the road that your best ideas come from, and eliminating that top layer of bureaucracy would probably be a step in the right direction.
Okay. Going back to your lottery plan, earlier this year you proposed a lottery plan for Alabama's education system. Why do you feel this is the best way to fund our schools?
Well, I don't know if it's the best way to fund our schools, but it's the most pragmatic way to fund our schools. I certainly think that a lottery is not, if you were to write out a list of where you could just do it, I wouldn't put it up there in the top one or two. But under Alabama's Constitution, it's going to be very difficult to find any other revenue sources or trade off any revenue sources. To unwind that could take years, and Alabama schools do not have years. We know that a lottery is very popular. More than 70% of Alabamians, when polled, are in favor of it, and it certainly would provide $300 million without raising taxes. And to me, this is the most pragmatic way for us to begin effectuating change throughout our state.
Okay. With Alabama's serious budget problems, what ways would you work to increase revenue for the budget?
We talked about the lottery, that's $300 million. What I'd like to do too is go ahead and validate where we have gambling existing right now by constitutional amendment. Now that's been questioned, certainly has been an issue between the governor's office, attorney general, and the courts. Go ahead and validate that by constitutional amendment and reach a compact with the Forge Creek Indians. To do that would generate another $100 million. Now, we're talking about $100 million. We're talking about $400 million between the two that you don't even have to increase taxes for. That's where we have to start. And I've said this constantly on the campaign trail. Before we move forward with our infrastructure plan, I want to propose that first because it's important to show Alabamians we're willing to tax we're willing to collect where we can before we ever consider taxing.
How would you reduce spending by our government to improve the budget as well?
Yeah, look, number one is where we can consolidate services and where we can use technology to replace old bureaucratic processes. Right now, our state government is archaic in many different ways, and we certainly need to upgrade and look for innovation. At City of Tuscaloosa, our standard of excellence is to be the most effectively managed and innovative city in the United States. I'd like to bring that to the state of Alabama. It's not easy within government. When I was earning my master's degree, I remember professors saying that government does what the private sector can't afford to do. So it's very difficult, but it doesn't mean that every day we shouldn't be looking for innovation. We're not doing that, in my opinion, across the state. We certainly are going to make that a focus. Again, that's the mayor in me. Let's make certain that we're as efficient and effective as possible. But at the same time, we've also cut ourselves so thin. Mental health. Today there are only 250 state troopers on our highways. Tuscaloosa Police Department is bigger than the state troopers. There are places in our state where we've cut beyond the bone, and the people of Alabama are suffering. We have to acknowledge that and address those issues as well.
And our last question for today is, what advice would you give young people like me who are interested in getting involved in politics?
Do it, because it is your future. A mayor, a city council member, a governor, we all are representatives of you, and in this great republic, you empower us to make decisions. But you have a responsibility even greater than me. It's your responsibility to be involved and to be active, and that's why I commend you. That's why I wanted to do the interview, because we need young people to take hold of their future, and one of the best ways you can do it is by doing what you're doing, being active, asking questions. We work for you. You pay my salary, and it's incumbent upon me to do the best I can to communicate effectively with you. And so get out there and be active. And I'll close with this. When you look at the history of this country, some of the most important achievements we've been able to accomplish have come from young people. Think about the Civil Rights Movement. I was recently in Selma, where they celebrated the 53rd anniversary of the March across Edmund Pettus Bridge. Most people walking across that bridge were young, and they were brave. And because of their bravery, we had the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Think about what happened recently at Parkland. Students who were caught in a school shooting have decided to have a voice, and I think that's important. Even if we don't agree with those voices, that's what makes up the fabric of democracy, and young people can play such a powerful role in making sure that fabric remains strong.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.